It's another lovely Sunday afternoon. You are welcome to Robin Minds. I am Osato Edokbayi, coming on the back of a week that had a lot of things happen, really, from the tragic to the entertaining to relief, especially if you follow sports and you've been following the Women's African Cup of Nations, where the Super Falcons finally got a win at this tournament after an embarrassing defeat in their first game. Loads of things to get through this afternoon with you, and it'll be my pleasure to take you through all of it all with some amazing guests. But we're starting off on a very important note that requires us to be as introspective as we need to be honest with the state of things in the country today. Last week, another young Nigerian, Ibrahim Mbaya in Jos, sadly lost his life after being accused of stealing an iPhone before any investigation, before any court hearing, and before any opportunity to defend himself. He was allegedly beaten to death by people who believed they had the authority to determine his guilt and administer punishment. The incident has sparked outrage across Nigeria. For many, it is yet another painful reminder of the persistence of jungle justice, where accusations are increasingly followed by instant violence rather than lawful investigation. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident. We've all heard the stories before, from the Alu 4 killings in Rivers State to the lynching of David Imo in Lagos and numerous unreported cases across the country. Mob justice continues to claim lives. Sometimes the victims are guilty of an offense. Sometimes they're innocent. In every case, the outcome is the same. Due process is replaced by collective violence. And this raises uncomfortable questions. Why do ordinary Nigerians participate in killings in broad daylight? Why do neighbors, traders, students, and even friends become executioners? Why do so many bystanders record these incidents instead of trying to stop them? I mean, has public confidence in the police and justice system deteriorated to the point where people believe violence is more effective than the law? Or is this no longer simply a policing problem, but evidence of a deeper moral and social crisis? So, as Nigeria grapples with insecurity, economic hardship, and growing public frustration, incidents of mob justice appear to reflect something larger than crime. They suggest an erosion of trust in institutions, a declining respect for human dignity, and an increasingly dangerous belief that accusation alone is enough to justify death. At its core, this conversation is not about defending criminals, as you'll see. It's about defending the rule of law. Because if society accepts that any crowd can decide who deserves to live or die, then no Nigerian is truly protected. Today, the victim may be someone accused of theft. Tomorrow, it could be someone falsely accused because of a rumor, because of personal grudges or mistaken identity. The strength of any democracy is measured not by how it treats the innocent, but by whether it guarantees justice even to those accused of wrongdoing. This discussion asks whether Nigeria is slowly abandoning that principle. Joining us to examine this virtually is Funke Adeoye. She's the Executive Director and founder of Hope Behind Bars. Good afternoon, Funke. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's fantastic to have you here. So there's obviously so much to get into. And, the first question that really bothers me when I see the videos, and they're very graphic, and when you hear these stories is, where has our humanity gone?
Thank you. I think that that's a question a lot of us are asking, having seen the videos that went viral last week. My deepest condolence to the family and friends of Ibrahim. Where has our humanity gone to? It's unfortunate because this incident of mob violence, as you said, is not one that just started this year. It's something that we have seen persist over and over for as long as possible. And it's quite unfortunate that in spite of every effort to create awareness as to the fact that mob justice is illegal, and the fact that people should not take matters into their own hands, we still find things like this persisting. For this particular video, it actually happened in a school community, in an academic community. Where has our humanity gone to? I think that's a question that we also have to keep asking, because you actually do not have to know the law or to understand the law to know that it is wrong for you to commit such manner of assault on another individual, talk more of going ahead to kill the individual. So I think that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves, and it's a very pressing question.
And, you know, just to follow up on that, because you have a legal background, and this country has a constitution. We're a constitutional democracy, for starters. And you have to ask yourself, and you sort of mentioned that a bit, but where do citizens, ordinary citizens, everyday people who have their own businesses to take care of, where do they get off thinking that they can now apprehend somebody, prosecute somebody, and more or less just convict the person in the streets? Why is this thing something that people are comfortable with, you think?
So I would say that, there are different reasons, there are different things that we can think about here. We can say this is a crime problem. We can also say this is a failure of our justice institutions. But I need us to first of all look at what has happened here. And that is the fact that ordinary citizens who do not have the right to prosecute, investigate, or even sentence a person have just committed an offense. When you look at our various legislations, you look at the Constitution, Section 33 of the Constitution protects our right to life. And this right is constant for everyone, irrespective of whether you've committed a crime or not. Now, the exception is that only when a court of competent jurisdiction sentences such a person to death, that's when that right can be taken. It has to be a court of competent jurisdiction. Now, Section 36 also gives us the right to fair hearing. Which is the fact that even if there's a presumption of innocence for everyone. So even if there is an allegation of crime, you must ensure that the proper due process is followed. And what's the due process? There must be an investigation, there must be prosecution, there must be trial, there must be a judgment before a sentence. Now, in this video, as you can see, what has happened is there was an allegation. After the allegation, there was violence, there was anger, and there was death. It's important that we understand that not only has the Constitution been violated, the young men in this video have also committed offenses under the criminal code. There's an offense of assault, grievous bodily harm, and murder. And then when you look at the video as well, you find that you can't even count the number of people. There are different people. There were people who were bystanders, who were looking. And the question is, what happens to bystanders in situations of mob justice as this? Are they also prosecuted? What does the law say about them? It's important to know that if there is proper evidence to prosecute bystanders in incidents like this, to show that they incited the action or they prevented the victim from actually acting, they could also be charged for conspiracy. So a lot of laws have actually been violated when you think about the incidents of mob justice, or when you think about the incidents of jungle justice in Nigeria.
And Funke, even a more concerning thing is what happens while this is ongoing, when these acts of mob justice are being carried out. We know of this particular case in Jos because somebody recorded it. I presume many people did, but this particular video that's gone viral was from a particular smartphone. People have smartphones everywhere nowadays. Why are people so comfortable taking out their phones? Irrespective of what the reason is or accusation is, why are people comfortable these days making content out of gruesome things like this?
I think that it's, I would say, first of all, that it's an issue relating to psychology, right? We seem as a society, or we seem as citizens, to be desensitized to violence. Let's take a pause away from mob justice and consider our smartphones in the past couple of months, in the past couple of years. There's a lot of insecurity in the land. There is a lot of violence. We literally sit down and we see pictures or videos of armed men killing civilians. So it looks as though as citizens, we are already desensitized to violence and blood. And then when you consider the fact that there are really no consequences for some of these actions, right? You may want to justify somebody bringing out a phone to say the phone was brought out in order to take evidence that law enforcement would use in case they want to arrest the perpetrators. But the more question is the earlier question you asked me about our humanity. I think that in addition to being desensitized to violence and blood, we are also, or to a very large extent, we are more concerned about self-preservation and self-interest, because you want to ask yourself, for some of the onlookers or some of the bystanders who were taking videos or taking pictures or whatnot, what could they really have done if they were not inciting the offenders, if they were not inciting the offenders or holding the victims? You know, you might want to ask yourself, is there a possibility that in trying to help the victim, they could also turn to them? So it's first an issue of being desensitized to violence because of our peculiarity as a nation currently, and also self-preservation, self-interest. Before we now even begin to look at things relating to consequences, because if people find that there are consequences for not taking action in situations like this, perhaps they would be more conscious of acting or making attempts to act in situations like this.
And now, you posited this earlier on in your introduction, and just want us to go to it now, because when you see the situation where people are literally taking the laws into their own hands and abrogating all this sort of the prosecutorial powers, conviction and so on to themselves in the streets, you are having a situation where it appears that people have lost trust in the criminal justice system. Now, with your background, is that the case that you see? What more can be done to repair that trust that's broken, to ensure that people can be certain that when a situation arises as this, they can put a call to the police and trust that justice will be served as it should be?
Okay, thank you for that question. And I think that's something that we all know as Nigerians. The justice system has been around for quite a while now. And when you talk about the justice system, we first look at the police before looking at the courts, the judiciary, and the correctional system. The general parlance that we all grew up is with police is your friend. But I can recall several times, even on this show, where you've had to discuss incidences where the police are actually the perpetrators of some of this violence. There are also issues of what happens if you go report to a police. For instance, let's take a look at this particular case. The allegation was that a phone was stolen. Now, can an average Nigerian walk into a police station and ask that their phones be tracked, a stolen phone be tracked, without the police requesting for money? That's a question we need to answer. I personally have had to track a phone, and I know I had to pay for the phone to be tracked. Now, when you look at the fact that the tracking devices used by law enforcement and police officers is paid for by taxpayers' money, and then we are not necessarily guaranteed that kind of support when we walk into a police station, then there is a problem. Generally, Nigerians have lost trust in the justice system. Nigerians have lost trust in the policing system of the country. And we know that there are lots of conversations around what needs to be done. There are lots of work that has actually been done. We should not just talk about the problems. There's some work that has been done. The police bill, for instance, in 2020 was enacted. And one of the points in the police bill is the necessity or the need for community policing, which I think is something that we keep missing out on as a country. The fact that the police institution as it is supposed to be closer to the people and closer to the citizens, closer to the members of the society, but oftentimes the police is closer to the elites in the community. We can also talk about the conversation around state policing, which I think it's a very hot topic right now. The state police bill currently has passed at the House of Reps and at the Senate, and it's gone into the constitutional amendment process. But a question I would like to ask is, how much did Nigerians engage this state police bill? Are we ready for state police? Are we ready for the gains of state police? Are we ready for the political, is our political system or our politics as a nation, is it ready for what state police can offer? Because yes, back to your question, a good reason why we might continue to have mob justice or jungle justice is because people do not think that the police would actually do something. But we must, as the police needs to begin to look at prevention. For prevention's sake, we need to build trust in the justice system. And I think another thing I should mention here is the need to also communicate. Now, before this call, I was thinking through on some of the incidences that have happened in the past. The Alufo, for instance, Alufo happened in 2012. And we did not have the conviction of the perpetrators until 2017. That is a whole 5-year gap. Now, a situation whereby victims have to actually wait for 5 years for them to actually get a conviction. That's another issue we can begin to talk about in the justice system. So there are lots of issues, there are plethora of issues when we look at whether people have a trust in the justice system or whatever it is that is causing a rise in mob justice in Nigeria.
All right. Funke, thank you so much for that. I've quite enjoyed our conversation. I've quite learned a lot. And there's so much more that we can get into, as well as where's the role of societal units like the family and the religious institutions here as well. And there's so many things that we can all go through. But as I mentioned at the start of this, we all need to look inwards and how we see these situations when these sort of things happen. And clearly we're on television, so there's some images we can't even show to protect the sensitivity of our viewers, and that's how bad things have gotten. And we're hopeful that as a society we can really come together and ensure that we protect every single person and justice is always served. Robin Mind continues. We'll be back.